I didn't move here to cause trouble. When I bought this house, a sleek, modern build at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, I imagined peace. A fresh start. The kind of place where neighbors waved in passing, where the loudest sounds were sprinklers ticking and kids riding bikes. And at first, it was just that. The neighborhood had a crisp, manicured perfection to it. Houses with wide, inviting porches. Lawns that looked like they had personal trainers. Even the mailboxes were uniform, black, wrought iron, standing at attention like little soldiers. It was the kind of place where everything seemed orderly, safe. Except, of course, for me, it wasn't blatant. No burning crosses or slurs spray-painted on my garage. Just small things, looks that lasted a beat too long. Smiles that never quite reached people's eyes. Conversations that stopped when I walked by. Still, I ignored it. People needed time to adjust. To get used to the new homeowner, who didn't look like the others. I focused on settling in, planting a few flowers, power washing the driveway, minding my own business. But she never let me. At first, I barely noticed her. A woman mid-50s, meticulously put together, cutting across my driveway as if it were a sidewalk. She was tall and thin, her silver blonde bob swaying as she strutted past with the confidence of someone who had never been told no. I assumed she was a neighbor taking a shortcut. Then I saw her again. And again. Every single morning. Always the same. She never glanced at my house, never hesitated, just walked straight through my driveway like it was hers. The first time I thought, maybe she doesn't realize. The second time, maybe she's in a rush. By the third, it was clear, she just doesn't care. It wasn't just the trespassing. It was the way she did it, like I wasn't even there. One morning, I was unloading groceries when she passed, so close I could hear the rustle of her pressed linen pants. I turned, shifting the bags in my hands. "Excuse me," I said. "Can I help you?" She barely slowed. "Oh no, dear. I'm just taking the easement." "The what?" I blinked, glancing at my empty, privately owned driveway. "There's no easement." She gave a polite, condescending smile. The kind that made my teeth grind. "It's a community access point. I'm on the HOA board, so I would know." And just like that, she kept walking. I stood there, groceries weighing heavy in my arms, my stomach twisting. Because I knew it was never just a shortcut. It was a warning, a reminder. She didn't see me as the homeowner. She saw me as an intruder. The next morning, I watched from my kitchen window, coffee in hand, as she did it again. Same crisp outfit. Same confident stride. Same total disregard. Only this time, she wasn't alone. Two other women, one clutching a yoga mat, the other pushing a stroller, trailed behind her, chatting like they were out for a morning stroll. As they crossed my driveway, the stroller's wheels bumped over the gravel. Not a single glance in my direction. Like my property was just another part of their route. I stepped outside. "Excuse me?" The women looked startled, like they hadn't even realized I was there. But she, the ringleader, didn't even flinch. "Good morning," she said, giving me that same tight-lipped, dismissive smile. I folded my arms. "This isn't a public walkway." She sighed, as if I was a child making a fuss over nothing. "I already told you. It's part of the easement." "There is no easement." The woman with the stroller cleared her throat, shifting uncomfortably. "Maybe we should just." But Trish, because I knew now her name was Trish, waved a perfectly manicured hand. "Oh, nonsense. We've been using this path for years. It's always been this way." Years? My house was newly built. Before me, there was nothing here but an empty lot. I tightened my grip on my coffee mug. Well, now it's mine. A flicker of something annoyance? Amusement crossed her face. But she recovered quickly. "Of course," she said smoothly. "We're all part of the same community, after all." She turned and walked away. The others followed. I stood there, the warmth of my coffee suddenly doing nothing to keep the cold unease from settling into my bones. This wasn't just about convenience. This was about control. The next sign came a few days later. I pulled into my driveway after work to find a man in a landscaping uniform adjusting my sprinklers. I frowned, stepping out of my car.
Hey.
Can I help you? He straightened, wiping sweat from his forehead. Miss Trish asked me to fix the settings. Said the spray was hitting the sidewalk. My pulse kicked up. Trish doesn't live here. The man hesitated. She said she was on the HOA board. I exhaled sharply. Did she now? That night, I checked my security footage. There she was, in the middle of the night, strolling through my driveway like she owned it, stopping to inspect my landscaping, even pointing at my security cameras, smirking to herself before disappearing into the darkness. My jaw clenched. This wasn't just entitlement. This was deliberate. She wasn't just using my property. She was testing me, and I was about to make damn sure she failed. I wasn't raised to let things slide. So the next morning, when Trish strolled through my driveway like she was on a red carpet, I stepped outside before she could reach the other side.
Stop, I said.
She did, but not because she respected my request. It was the tone that caught her.
Sharp.
Unyielding. She turned, head tilted, that infuriating smirk already forming. Something wrong, dear? I stepped closer. You're trespassing. Again. Trish sighed, like I was being difficult. Oh, don't be dramatic. I've been walking this way for years. Yeah? Well, I live here now, and I'm telling you to stop. She gave a short, patronizing laugh. This neighborhood has a certain expectation, you understand? A level of trust and tradition. I knew what she meant. This was a mostly white, old money suburb. The kind where people called the cops on black teenagers riding bikes but waved at the ones mowing their lawns. I was a disruption. A crack in the picture-perfect neighborhood they'd curated. And Trish? She saw herself as the gatekeeper. You're not listening, I said, stepping in front of her. Stay off my property. The smile vanished. Her lips pursed, her nostrils flaring. Then, with a condescending shake of her head, she stepped around me and kept walking. I stood there, fists clenched, blood hammering in my ears. She was testing me, daring me to react. Fine. She wanted a game? I'd play. The retaliation begins. The next day, I put up a row of low shrubs along the driveway's edge. Nothing fancy, just enough to make it clear that my property wasn't a public walkway. By morning, they were flattened, torn up at the roots. I checked the security footage. Trish, in the dead of night, dragging a rake through my yard like a petulant child. She wasn't even trying to be subtle anymore. That's when I realized this wasn't just about me. So I started asking around. The couple 2 doors down? She'd reported them to the HOA for having improper fencing after they installed a ramp for their disabled son. The Latino family across the street? Fined for excessive lawn decor because their daughter had drawn chalk art on the sidewalk. A pattern emerged. Trish wasn't just enforcing rules, she was weaponizing them. And she had a particular target. Anyone who didn't fit her idea of what this neighborhood should be. The HOA power play. I brought my evidence, security footage, torn up shrubs, statements from neighbors, to the next HOA meeting. The room was full, mostly older white homeowners, sitting in neat rows of folding chairs. Trish sat front and center, legs crossed, sipping from a monogrammed thermos like she had already won. I stood. We need to talk about a problem. Trish didn't even wait for me to finish. Yes, she said, voice oozing with fake sympathy. I was going to bring this up myself. Some homeowners have been acting hostile toward the community. The room shifted. Eyes flicked to me. I stared at her, heartbeat pounding. Hostile. She sighed dramatically. A few neighbors have mentioned feeling unsafe after certain confrontations. There it was. She was playing the aggressive black man card, turning the room against me before I could even speak. I forced my voice to stay calm. I have security footage of Trish trespassing on my property, vandalizing it, harassing my landscapers. A murmur spread through the room. Trish let out a sharp, rehearsed laugh. Vandalizing? I was correcting improper landscaping. Someone in the back coughed awkwardly. I set my laptop on the table and hit play. The footage rolled, Trish, in the dead of night, ripping up my shrubs.
Gasps.
A few shocked whispers. Trish's face went pale. But then she doubled down. She stood, eyes flashing. This is outrageous. I was simply maintaining community standards. And frankly, she turned to the crowd, voice dripping with venom. I find it very interesting that I'm being attacked when I was only trying to uphold the values of this neighborhood. A heavy silence fell. I looked around. Some people avoided my gaze. Others fidgeted in their seats. And I realized they knew. Maybe they didn't like Trish. Maybe they even agreed with me. But would they side with the black guy over the white woman in pearls? Probably not. Trish straightened her blouse, smoothed her hair. Then she smiled. Because she thought she'd won. I exhaled slowly. Not yet. Not even close. I knew Trish wasn't going to stop. Not after the HOA meeting. Not after the footage. Not after being caught red-handed. She had been the queen of this neighborhood for years. People feared her, obeyed her, and in her mind, I was just another problem she could quietly erase. But she underestimated me. Because I wasn't just collecting evidence. I was setting the stage. The final straw. A few nights later, I woke to the sound of crunching gravel. I checked my phone. 2:17 a.m. I sat up, heart hammering. Checked the security feed. There she was, dressed in all black, like some deranged HOA ninja, standing in the middle of my driveway. She had a canister in her hand. Something bulky. I grabbed my phone and hit record. She bent down, shaking the canister. The light from my porch caught the words printed on it. Weed killer. My stomach dropped. She was poisoning my grass, my hedges, my property. I felt something cold and dangerous settle in my chest. Trish had made a mistake. A big one. Because tonight, she wasn't just trespassing. Tonight, she had escalated to destruction of property. And I had it all on tape. The setup. The next morning I made 2 phone calls. The first was to my lawyer. The second was to the local news station. Then I waited. By noon, Trish was at my door. Not knocking. Pounding. I opened it slowly, already recording. Something wrong. Her face was red with fury. Oh, don't play dumb. I leaned against the frame. I never do. Her eyes flicked past me, toward my driveway. The scene of the crime. She inhaled sharply. Listen, I don't know what game you think you're playing, but... I held up my phone, thumb hovering over play. You mean this game? I tapped the screen. And suddenly, the sound of her own crime filled the space between us. The hiss of the weed killer. The whisper of her own muttering. The clear, irrefutable proof that she had crossed a line she couldn't walk back. Trish's face drained of color. You edited that, she stammered. I raised an eyebrow. Funny. You said the same thing at the HOA meeting. She clenched her fists, desperation flickering in her eyes. This is harassment. You can't just... Oh, but I can. I stepped forward, voice steady. See this footage? It's already in the hands of my lawyer. And in about an hour, a news crew will be here to cover it. Her mouth snapped shut. I let the weight of that settle in. Let her imagine the headlines, the whispers, the scandal. Finally, she forced out a laugh, tight and brittle. You think anyone will care? I have friends, connections. I smiled. Oh, I know. That's why I also called the police. The color in her face vanished entirely. They'll be here any minute, I continued. So by all means keep talking. Silence. Her breath hitched, her eyes darting side to side, looking for an exit, for a way to undo this. But there was none. For the first time, she had lost. Trish stood there, frozen. For once, she had no smug retort, no fake smile to smooth things over. She knew. She was trapped. Her eyes darted past me, scanning the street as if she could will someone, anyone, to swoop in and save her. But the usual allies weren't there. No HOA lackeys. No pearl-clutching housewives nodding in agreement. Instead, there were witnesses. Neighbors, peeking from their porches. A few taking cautious steps onto their driveways, drawn by the tension thick in the air. And then, the cherry on top, the news van. It turned the corner, rolling to a stop in front of my house. The logo, Channel 6 Investigates, was plastered across the side. Trish let out a strangled breath. "You called the news?" I folded my arms. I figured the public should know how the president of the HOA spends her nights. Her face twisted. She opened her mouth, about to spew some desperate excuse. And that's when the cop car pulled up. A single officer stepped out, resting a hand on his belt as he took in the scene. My stomach tensed. I had not forgotten what happened when the police got involved with people like me. But I had prepared. I kept my stance calm, my voice even. "Officer, thanks for coming. I have video proof of her trespassing and vandalizing my property." Trish's head snapped toward him. "This is ridiculous. He's exaggerating. This whole thing is some big misunderstanding." The cop, an older guy with tired eyes, gave a slow nod.
"All right.
Let's take a look." I handed him my phone. The crowd pressed in, murmuring as the video played. There she was, caught in 4K, spraying weed killer in the dead of night, committing a crime. I watched her face as she listened to the evidence against her. At first, she tried to maintain her composure, chin lifted, arms crossed, the same haughty confidence she always wore like armor. But then, her breathing picked up. Her eyes flicked toward the camera crew. The reporter, mic in hand, whispering to her cameraman. The realization was sinking in. This wasn't some private HOA dispute. This was public. And suddenly, the cracks began to show. The public unraveling. No. This is out of context. Trish's voice rose in desperation. I was correcting a landscaping violation. It was just community maintenance. The officer arched a brow. At 2 a.m? She floundered. Well, I have the right to enforce HOA standards. This man, she spat the word like it was an insult, has been harassing me, making threats. He's not a good fit for this neighborhood. A sharp silence fell. There it was. The real reason behind all of this. The thing she had been tiptoeing around for weeks. She didn't think I belonged here. I let the weight of her words settle over the crowd. Then I turned to my laptop because I wasn't done. That's interesting, I said, clicking a file open. Because I have another video. Trish flinched. I hit play. This time, the screen showed the other neighbors. The Latino family getting fined for their daughter's chalk drawings. The black couple receiving citations for having the wrong shade of paint on their door. The disabled child's ramp being deemed non-compliant. A pattern of harassment. All traced back to Trish. The crowd's energy shifted. I heard gasps. Whispers of realization. Trish panicked. That's private HOA business. This is a smear campaign. You're making me out to be a racist, I supplied coolly. Her face burned red. I never said. You didn't have to. The damage was done. The officer sighed, rubbing his temple. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to step away while we sort this out. She stiffened. You can't. You're going to take his word over mine? The cop exhaled. I'm taking the video evidence over your word. The reporter took a step closer, mic out. Miss Trish, do you have any comment on these accusations? Trish's breath hitched. Her gaze flicked wildly between the crowd, the cop, the cameras. The weight of it all was collapsing on her. She had spent years building her reputation, her power, and now it was crumbling. Her hands curled into fists. Then, without another word, she turned and ran. Not back toward her house. Toward her car. The ultimate act of a coward. The crowd watched in stunned silence as she fumbled with a door handle, practically throwing herself into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life. She sped off, leaving behind everything she had built, everything she had just lost. I stood there, watching her retreating taillights. The once mighty queen of the HOA, now nothing but a disgraced runaway. And I wasn't done.
Not yet.
Trish didn't make it far. The police caught up with her 2 blocks away, pulling her over in front of the same neighbors she had terrorized for years. Handcuffs, a squad car, a perp walk in broad daylight. And the cameras? They were rolling. By the next morning, her face was plastered across the local news. HOA president arrested for trespassing, vandalism, and harassment. Her mugshot, puffy-eyed, stunned, defeated, circulated like wildfire. Social media tore her apart. The next-door forums, once her personal playground, turned against her. And when the full story broke, the years of discrimination, the HOA abuse, the blatant targeting of minority homeowners, her entire empire collapsed. The HOA board met without her. And by the end of the week, she was officially removed.
Gone. Erased.
The community awakens. The shift in the neighborhood was instant. For the first time, people started talking. The Latino family across the street? Their daughter's chalk drawings reappeared, this time covering the whole sidewalk in bright, beautiful colors. The black couple with the wrong door color? Their neighbors helped them repaint the exact same shade just to make a point. And the disabled kids' ramp? A group of us pitched in, rebuilt it bigger, better, stronger. No fines. No citations. Because Trish wasn't here to stop us. I started getting nods from people who used to look right past me. A wave here. A smile there. Little things, but important ones. Like they were finally seeing me as a neighbor. A final goodbye. A week later, I stood at the edge of my driveway, looking at the place where Trish used to cut through. It felt different. Lighter. But I wasn't done. The next morning, the landscapers arrived. Not for repairs. For something better. By the end of the day, my driveway was no longer just a driveway. It was a hedge maze.
Tall. Thick.
Impenetrable. A perfect middle finger to Trish's legacy. A few neighbors stopped by, watching as the last of the hedges were planted. One of them, a man who had sat quietly through every HOA meeting, shook his head with a chuckle. "You really went all out, huh?" I grinned. Had to make sure nobody accidentally cuts through anymore. A pause. Then, to my surprise, he smiled. "Can't say I blame you." We stood there for a moment, looking at the towering green walls. A barrier. A symbol. Proof that I was here to stay. And this time, no one could take that from me.